What's up guys? Welcome back to another Limitless YouTube video. I'm Sam and today we're going to be talking a little bit about how much money you need to be financially independent. So as you begin to learn about financial independence and you learn how awesome it is, one of the first questions that you're going to run into is basically how much money do I need to have in order to be financially independent? Now that's a pretty open-ended answer or question because the answer can vary so much. It's different for everybody. And that number is basically going to be dependent upon how much you cost to live, what your living expenses are every month and every year to live. So in this video I'll go through basically how to figure out what that number is for you, and hopefully that'll give you an idea of kind of what your savings targets should be, and kind of inspire you to get started. So the way I want you to start this off is by creating a table like what I have on the screen here. And basically you're going to run through all of your expenses that you have each month. The best way that I think you can do this is just go into your online bank or whatever you use to check like your bank statements, and see basically what you've spent in the last month and what are all of your expenses. So go through the list, try to check like basically anything that's a reoccurring payment, so like your rent or food or like a bus pass or any of that kind of stuff, or maybe like car insurance. Include all of those things into the table that you've built, and you should come up with a number that basically represents the amount of money that you need to live every month. So make sure that you don't include any like one-time expenses, like for example, for me going to school, like having a tuition payment of like $10,000 or something like that. You don't need to include expenses like that, because that's not going to be your actual like living expense in the future. And what I would say is that it's probably a good idea to have some sort of buffer built in. Like I'd say maybe 10% or so of your overall monthly expenses. I would add on like a little 10% buffer, and that just helps kind of, well, it gives you some buffer room for months that you might be spending a little bit more. Sometimes you might spend a little less, but just better to be on the safe side, and that way you can have like a realistic target for what you actually need to have saved up in order to live off that. Now, one thing you'll probably realize as you start going through all of your expenses is that there's a ton of shit in there that you don't need, and there's so much stuff on, like when I went through all of my expenses and I looked at like my Visa bill and all that, like there's so much stuff that you don't even realize that you're buying because it's so easy to spend money. And so this is kind of where it's like you can start looking at, okay, where can I cut back on some of the things that I'm spending on? Do I, I know a lot of people like to have like Netflix and Spotify and all these subscriptions and that kind of stuff. Like I have both of those, for example, and those are worth it to me. But like, I don't know, if the more subscriptions that you sign up for, if you have like Apple TV and like Disney Plus and like all this kind of stuff, those expenses add up because they're reoccurring expenses, and you're paying them every single month. So anything that you can find that you can kind of reduce is going to make your goal easier to get to, and it'll just make this a lot more efficient. So once you've looked at all of your expenses for 1 month, usually you can kind of extrapolate this number out to the rest of the year. So let's say for 1 month you spend $2,000, then you can roughly say that in a year you'll probably spend about $24,000. Now during some months you'll spend a little bit more than others. For example, in the month of December you might be buying Christmas presents and that kind of thing, so it might be a little higher up in that month, and so that's why I think it's good to have a little buffer in there, but also maybe include a little category for like gifts and that kind of thing, so that like you have a little bit of money set aside for if you buy somebody a birthday present or whatever it is. So now that you have a number for how much you cost as a person every month or every year, we can start to look at basically how much you need to have saved up in order to pay for that. And so I think that using a number like 5% is a pretty good way of doing what I'm about to talk about next. So I think that, let's say fast forward 20 years into your life and you have a bunch of money saved up and you put all that money into some dividend paying stocks or some sort of asset that's going to give you some sort of cash flow every month to pay for your life. So let's use a dividend stock, for example. If that dividend pays 5%, so in other words, you're getting a 5% return on your investment every year, which is a fairly realistic number, I think, then you can expect to get 5% of the overall value of your assets. You can get that in like a cash payment basically, and you can use that in order to pay for yourself to live. So let's say that your life basically costs $2,000 per month. And that's including your buffer and all of that stuff. You've figured it all out and you cost $2,000 per month. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that $2,000, we're gonna multiply it by the number of months in the year, so 12. We got 24,000. And 24,000, now we're gonna divide that number by 0.05 or 5%, which is gonna be our yield when we have this capital invested to pay for our living expenses. So that number is gonna yield $480,000. So this is basically what the target is gonna be for somebody who wants to live off of $2,000 a month. You're gonna need $480,000 invested, and you're gonna have to get a 5% return in order to get that $2,000 per month. So whatever your number is, you can do this exact same calculation, and if you want, you can kind of make this a little bit more conservative by lowering the percentage of return that you're gonna get. So you can bring it down to maybe 4% if you want to be on the more the safe side, or if you think that you can get a higher return than that for some reason, then maybe increase that percentage, and that's actually going to bring down the amount of money that you need allocated in order to pay for your living expenses. So for most people, reaching a goal of $480,000 is extremely difficult, or at least seems to be extremely difficult, and there's no doubt that it is. But there's lots of things that we can do in order to start basically getting there a little faster, or even to reduce the amount of money that we need to have saved up. We can maybe turn that into $300,000 if you're just able to live off of less money per month. And that's something that I think not a lot of people understand, is how much it matters to save, just like $1 or $2 a month, and how much that affects the amount of money that you need in order to survive off of your investments. So something that helps keep me motivated in reaching that goal for myself is just keeping track of where I'm at. So you can use like that 5% rule and just apply it to however much money you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You can figure out exactly how much your net worth basically would be paying you on a monthly basis based on that 5% rule. So this can kind of give you an idea of where you're at, how far you have to go, and just remember that as you kind of keep doing this and you keep saving, that number is going to exponentially grow. So you're just right at the bottom of the exponential curve, and it's going to seem like a little bit of a grind at the start, but soon enough it's really going to start growing a lot faster, and it's going to be really exciting. So I'll have lots more video ideas of what we can do to kind of accelerate that growth, but this is basically just intended to give you an idea of like where you're even at and that kind of thing. So yeah. So let's say currently you have $12,000 saved up. If you use that 5% rule and you apply it to the current $12,000 that you own, that would basically mean that you could be being paid $50 a month for doing absolutely nothing. And so maybe this is something you could use to cover your phone bill every month or something like that. And so even though that's a fairly small item in the grand scheme of things, you can see how that could apply to maybe your rent. You could start living for free, or you could own a car for free. You could make all your car payments, your insurance, all that kind of stuff. And so the more money that you can save, the less money you're gonna have to spend on expenses, and the more money you can then throw into your investments and accelerate that growth. Do you guys think 5% is a fairly good return on investment number to use? Or is there something maybe I'm forgetting to consider? Let me know what you guys think and drop any comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, hope you learned something. I'm Sam, this is Limitless, and I'll see you in the next one.